Hi, this is Dr. Zeus on week 11, Ask Dr. Zeus segment, where I go ahead and respond to your examples and comments and help us as a class develop a better way of coming at what is all collectively basically a craft of emotional intelligence, applying ourselves, working through feelings, and allowing ourselves to more directly get at our ability to engage others constructively, engage ourselves, and grow through emotional challenges. So let's go. I will go back to the board here and come up with new examples. Okay. As I said before, lying to another person to save another person pain at the end of the last video, part 1, almost never works. It can almost repression, lying, avoiding emotional feelings, isolating yourself really only works for a very, very small class of emotions having to do with things like violently angry outbursts and complete inability to have any kind of control over your emotions and physical and emotional or psychological harm you would do to somebody of a traumatic nature just by reacting to a feeling. Outside of that, it's almost never a good idea to repress, avoid, lie about your own feelings to other people. It usually ends up creating a worse situation where the person feels betrayed, where you don't prepare yourself for things like grief, where you don't create honest and transparent relationships. So again, I think a lot of the difficulty we have around actually being true and real with ourselves and others has to do with a certain self-esteem. We feel as if being real will show others that we're weak or we're not worthy. If we are vulnerable enough to just demonstrate we have negative emotions or weak emotions like fear or whatever, that somehow we'll fall in the eyes of others and even in our own estimation. I would say actually it's the exact opposite. If you can be real about your feelings, how many people are like that? How strong of a man, and I'm speaking as a male because males try to hide their feelings, is required of my manhood to be vulnerable and to be open with my feelings, especially if I'm not that good about talking about them. That requires a strong and courageous person to do that. And it really is appreciated, I've found, by especially women. When a man is not simply just trying to be a big shot or trying to be stoic, but actually sharing. So again, the truth of the matter is people who are open about their feelings and health and trying to deal with them in a healthy, constructive way are actually, and I think this is more often being recognized in society, are actually stronger people, more courageous people. And it's exactly those kind of people I'm hoping you are these people can begin to create a new precedent, a new leadership going forward for others so that they can develop the craft understanding and see the precedent for themselves about increasing their own emotional intelligence, being more transparent and honest about their feelings. So here's an example, and I'm just going to go through the steps on this one because it's sort of a nice example of working through the steps very succinctly in some of the assignments that I give you, okay? I said here, give an example from your past when you lied to yourself or others emotionally or repressed or were silent about a matter of deep concern to you. And so this person's working as a social worker. She said, during a big meeting with our largest insurance contract, I sat at a table where I didn't know anyone. However, I soon found out that I was sitting with many of the higher-ups that dictated where the funding was funneled. Nevertheless, I knew that these people were important, and I had to watch what I said in front of them. I was really nervous, and I felt as if I had to tell them all the downfalls we experienced and the lack of accountability we encountered with our departments. But I held back and went along with them on how great their services were. They made it a point that their delivery of services was better than ever, and I knew I could not tell them the truth, and I lied to them. This is it. You're in a less powerful position. You have people who are higher ups. They want to make their job look like they've been doing everything. There are actually very real problems down here in which this insurance money is either being abused or funneled in the wrong ways or being ineffective. But in this kind of meeting, the stakes are so high, and one's job might even be imperiled, and certainly one's estimation, that lying and saying, listen, everything is going along with the lie that everything is going great. Difficult situation. I think it would be probably very difficult in this situation to say, listen, okay, there are things that we can improve here to improve this situation of delivery. Not everything is as good as it could be. There are good things. Here are some of those good things that are happening with this insurance money. And here are things where we can improve the effectiveness and efficiency of that money doing more good for more people. See how I just stated that? You are able to accept that these people will be challenged and reactive to criticism. But by changing the word from criticism to how money, by appreciating and saying the money is doing well and thus affirming them, but at the same time saying this money could be done and used better, and here are some of my ideas, you're creating a positive affirmation followed up by a positive and constructive suggestion for improvement. Okay, do you see how that works? Just as a kind of example. Okay, this person goes on, what was your reason for doing this? Her or his reason was, I felt a bit guilty, okay, that I told them how great their services were, but I knew I could not say anything negative, okay? Again, the trick here is to say the quote negative in a positive way that really aims at improvement and using that money better. It said it had consequences on the people who suffer from not benefiting from the resources at their full potential. Knowing that, again, it's important to begin to actually address those needs, but in a way that will be successful. Instead of an either or where you say, hey, if I bring it up, they're going to come down on me. And if I don't bring it up, people are going to suffer and not get the services they need. Do both. Say, listen, these are great things that the money is doing. They're great jobs that you're doing. Here's how things could happen better. Here are some certain people who are not being served at this point. Can we find a better way to funnel this money and a more effective way to use it so more of these people are being served? Again, a win-win situation versus, in this case, a lose-lose situation. The lose-lose situation, when you lie about your feelings, in this case, is they don't know that there are problems, and they are just go ahead and propagandizing themselves that they're doing a great job. So that's lose. So they aren't actually doing a good job. And of course, the people this money is meant to help are losing out on getting better services as well. Change that to a win-win, where you do help to support and recognize the goodness of this money helping people, and win in terms of helping that happen even better. So they can feel like they're doing well, and at the same time, everybody could work together to improve matters, okay? Again, this person reacted with guilt, shame, and disgust about not having the guts to stand up, but it's not really guts here. Really, you have to discern what battles you pick, and in this case, I think it more had to do with the ways in which you are able to engage them on a level that will not create threat. I think that's an important thing to realize, okay? And how might you have responded differently? After learning how much of my members need me and how much they seek of me to make a difference in their life, I wish I had the strength to be the voice of those who need help in order to be successful with their mental issue. I've learned from many people that we're just little fish in a big pond, and therefore we cannot compete with the shark. Here's what I would say. You don't have to compete with the shark, okay? You don't have to see the higher-ups as sharks, even though sometimes they act like it. You can still conduct yourself in a way that says, listen, we can enact accountability while still affirming that we're all trying to do a good job. Simple as that. Win-win situation. So remember we talked about self-determination theory, okay, and how this played out. And consequences of not having self-determination and hints for developing it. And again, let me stress this, lying about feelings does not help. Okay, this person in her junior year of high school was really involved in cheerleading, and they had been selected to compete in London for 2 weeks. And she told her mom, very excited, and much to her surprise, her mom was not excited as she hoped, and her mom ended up talking this person into thinking that going to London wasn't a good idea because it wouldn't be safe, it required a lot of money. This person hid her feelings out of respect for her mom's decision, okay, saying, oh, it's perfectly okay, and all right, we can't make it. And then she watched her friends all experience a trip of a lifetime while she sat at home wishing so badly that she could be there too. She ended up bottling her emotions so much that one day she completely lashed out at her parents, saying they should have tried harder to raise the money and let her go. So again, that just shows you that whole interest. When you bottle things up, usually that emotion grows with interest, okay? And it ends up coming out in a more explosive and a stronger way. Again, she recommended that maybe she should have done it differently. She said, listen, I really feel this. I will take steps to make sure this is safe, and I will help raise that money. But I really want to go. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Again, see, I love it. I'm not even having to tell you guys how to do this. You're already figuring out alternatives. In other words, to come up with, to help move things forward. I'm learning a lot from you. These are great examples, by the way. So EQ, emotional intelligence. Give an example from your past when you lied to yourself and others emotionally, or repressed, or were silent about a matter of deep concern to you. This person said, for a very long time, I lied to myself about how much the rejection of my mom affected me emotionally. I played this rejection off as if it didn't matter, or I was better off without her, negativity and nagging. The truth is that I spent almost a decade repressing the overwhelming sadness and anger that I felt about her undesire to be a mom to me, her lack of desire to be a mom to me. So we're not only talking about avoiding, repressing, lying about, right? But we're also talking about rationalizing. Oh, I'm better off, right? Again, it's not that convincing, okay? And why? What was your reason for doing this, okay? In this example, I didn't want her to see how much her rejection hurt me, okay? Many of my choices in life were not what she wanted of me, but had worked so hard in what I did to try to show her that I was committed to the choices I did make. I wanted her to feel some of the rejection I felt. So I lied about my emotional reaction to the situation. She didn't want to see that she was hurt, didn't want that person to have power over her, and wanted to feel some of the rejection by her rejecting her mom. Two wrongs don't make a right here, but sometimes it is perfectly understandable. You want that person to feel your pain, and you want that person to empathize. And when they don't do so voluntarily, sometimes you want to force that empathy on them by making them feel rejected. Again, continuing, for many years, I felt like I was running from myself. I couldn't decide on a path, couldn't stay in one place. Lying about such raw emotion for so long is like leaving a pulsing flesh wound and hoping that it will heal itself. A great metaphor, an absolutely great metaphor. That is a line that will stick in my head. And in fact, I'm going to go right now and just go ahead and, oops. All right. So, okay. Oh, here it is. Oh, I accidentally hit something different. I was going to say, that is one to stick in the head there. Okay. Oh, lying about such raw emotion. Oh, and I'll even continue there with this. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and underline it there. Let me repeat this. Lying about such raw emotion for so long is like leaving a pulsing flesh wound and hoping that it will seal itself. The level of repression is mentally, spiritually, and even physically exhausting, and it will eventually break you. I can't think of a better statement of the consequences of not being honest and transparent about your feelings with yourself and others. That's something just simply to reflect upon. I was not happy with myself. I struggled to find happiness around others. I seemed to constantly fail during my early adult years, and at times these failures felt like a validation of my mom's disapproval. See, what happens when these negative emotions get hidden and then they gain interest and they start overtaking your life, instead of learning into them and using them as doorways to beginning to confront and develop strength and courage and vulnerability, is this. And again, luckily, this person was able to learn through that and say, how might you have responded differently knowing what you know now? I think I would have focused on how I could heal the gaping mental and emotional wound instead of trying to fill it with anything else that kept me busy. I sometimes wonder what I could have accomplished in that nearly 10 years I had put if I had not put so much energy into lying to myself about how badly she wounded my self-esteem, self-acceptance, and overall emotional state. The poignancy of this kind of statement cannot be overstated, okay? This tremendous grief is compounded with interest when we lie to ourselves, okay? In justices, we try to get away from the pain. We try to just lick the wound and throw it to the side, saying it's too painful, time will heal all wounds, and yet at this time it doesn't. Certain wounds actually gain over it. When emotional wounds are different than physical wounds, and even physical wounds need to be treated and acknowledged, cleaned out, given antiseptic, and honesty and transparency in what's actually happened to you. Emotional wounds, sometimes we allow ourselves the unfortunate luxury of trying to hide because they're not apparent. They don't fester in the same kind of ways, but they still fester. Okay. Here's an excellent example for group projects, using an honest evaluation and recognition of the negative as a doorway to the positive, connected with resources and research. So as you're doing your group projects, here's a nice example about emotional repression and guilt that shows you, on the first example, how specific life examples, using specific life examples and how they relate to the subject. Okay, so some examples of guilt that I feel in my life revolve primarily around my son, my fiance. Base of feeling often comes from me feeling I'm lacking in my ability, right? Treating her son, the son's pointing at little kids in the grocery store, overcome with guilt that she's not actually maybe getting more play dates. Husband's coming home exhausted, right? Feeling guilty about that, okay? Not doing enough there. Relating these examples to videos and other sources, okay? In this case, Jasmine in the film Silent Beauty, which I referred to in the work template, okay? This was a book about abuse. It was a film about abuse, but it was also a film about family, the beauty of family as well. Anyway, in this film, as this person pointed out, she, that is Jasmine, the director of the film, described how she became so deeply set in these suppressed memories of abuse and silence that she physically started to have hearing loss, frozen and silent, while the world moved around her, okay? So relating it to video and also relating it to research, okay? After reading Ekman's point on excitement, I found myself thinking about some possibilities after I read how the emotion comes after a challenge. If I look at where my guilt was originating from, such as my son's lack of interaction with children his own age, I could change my perspective from guilt to excitement of new experiences and possibilities. Instead of relying upon my own social circle, I could fuel my guilt into motivation to find new parent friends, extending to more resources for new parents, such as the YMCA Mommy and Me programs, and even a couple toddler social classes I've been looking into. This is an excellent example of just a couple of sentences doing all you really need to do in terms of a strategy. In the group presentation, I want you to come up with strategies of moving, right, from the so-called negative or harmful or a destructive emotion, one that's not constructive, to one that's more constructive. What happens when we get besieged by emotions, and especially if we repress them or lie about them and they fester, is we don't open up our mind to other opportunities. Here, this emotion, right, of guilt was used as a doorway, once that person learned into it, to looking into opportunities and committing to following up on those. And even though it uses a little bit of emotional energy and time and effort, it actually provides much more space for you to work on those emotional underlying feelings of guilt. And it frees up time. Other people are helping you. It's an interesting thing that once we are besieged by negative emotions, that our world keeps getting smaller and smaller, and the very help that will allow us to get more mental health, that would allow us to deal with our guilt, allow us to get more time and effort, okay, is erased because we're so consumed in the negative emotion, okay? So it is important, again, to acknowledge the negative emotion, learn into it, see it as a doorway into motivated action to create something better for you and the persons you care about. Does locking up feelings ever work? Maybe, hard to tell in this example. Maybe certain emotional events simply tell you about who someone else is and whether you want to relate to them in a deep way in the future, okay? maybe sometimes you don't have to be frank with someone. It just happens that the example you have with them shows you that you don't want to have a relationship with somebody. I don't think I'll really go into the depths of this example, but that's basically what it boiled down to. Trust was broken with certain individuals, and the consequences were that the relationship weren't as good. Um, and again, not wanting to feel these feelings and not wanting to have those relationships is an option. It can be the case that if you're honest and open with your feelings, that doesn't require you to be honest and open with the other person. Okay? Doesn't necessarily mean that you're judging them when some people take certain actions and you decide in the end, okay, that's enough for me. I'm moving on, or I'm limiting my relationship with that other person. I wouldn't get hard on yourself on that. Okay? That can happen sometime. I said there are hard trade-offs are helped by emotional honesty and communication, sharing a house with relatives and having no reliable space of one's own. Okay? So again, these emotional situations aren't always about good and bad. Some they're two competing goods. Okay? In this case, this is the person growing up. This example is about a person growing up and always being forced out of a room to allow an aunt to come in or a relative to come in to stay with them. Again, that's good to be helping out family. But again, by not emotionally being transparent and honest and being able to express the difficulty of always being torn up and moved around from your room to accommodate other people, again, they had the same thing. There was kind of a blow up there. Okay, it just got her madder, and finally she blew up at her parents about doing that all the time. Again, open emotional honesty and communication, very key here. What I love about this example is about brutal honesty, sociocultural variables dealing with emotional situations. Again, it's interesting to look at sociocultural variables have to do with your ethnicity, your family situation, religion, those kinds of things that influence your way, your context, your social context for experiencing and interpreting emotions, okay? So, sociocultural variables, it's interesting to compare Hispanic American and Scots-Irish American in this particular example, okay? So in the case of most of the Hispanic American examples have been mostly about silencing and saving another person's feelings and not being clear about them. This person is exactly the opposite. I'm the friend you don't want to ask for my opinion or truth. I'm brutally honest, and there aren't too many times, if any at all, that I can remember that I lied to myself or anyone else. I also wear my heart on my sleeve, and I don't hold back in my emotions. Well, I don't get angry very often, and if I do, get very quiet. And if I do, I get very quiet. But when I'm perturbed or upset, then the Scottish and Irish comes out of me, and I've been known to make sailors blush by the things that come out of my mouth. I don't just hold back, but then just as quickly the heat subsides and dissipates into nothing. I don't hold grudges, nor do I seek revenge, and I'd rather walk away from any confrontation begins with anyone. Now I've told white lies in order to spare someone's feelings, as I don't see a reason to go out of my way to make anyone feel bad about themselves. But this gives you the other side of it. Someone who's really, really frank, really lets it blow over, is brutally honest, and then there is nothing held inside, nothing to fester and gain interest over time, okay? I come from a Greek more background, and that's how we do it in the Mediterranean. You argue with someone, you debate with someone, you let it out, and you don't take it personally, you know? It just all becomes part of it. More, certain cultures, I notice more Northern European, more stoic, don't tend to have almost the opposite emotional thing. Now, they both have benefits and liabilities that we can learn from. Again, being really open with your emotions sometimes can just piss people off, can create drama, can create a zoo, okay? But not being open with your emotions can create that festering. So a nice balance of learning between these two things would be helpful, I think. Oh, here was a humorous example. I'm just going to put sometimes your lying can get so extreme. Here's a great example. What about lying about you lied about or repressed or were silent about emotion? One example that I can think of when I joined the military years ago, I joined the Navy, and although I did not know how to swim, I still don't. I convinced myself that it would be no problem once I got there. Somehow I believed that I would learn how to swim in a second and would be okay. Well, this person was forced to go up over a barrier and jump into water and swim to the shore and nearly drowned the people. People got a good laugh out of that, and she managed somehow to pass the swim test, but obviously not to swim enough to consider herself able to swim. She said, I don't know that I would be able to respond differently another time around, but if I would, I could choose to have an open, healthy line of communication with my loved one from the very beginning. I wouldn't try to get this through this on my own. Oh, that's a different entry. But again, it does summarize nicely what the best way to handle things that are difficult between you and others that you care about. Okay, let them know. Be relaxed about it. Allow other people to offer their opinion. Work on a way together to be able to handle this emotion, difficult emotion, in the short term and in the long term, right? Grow towards something healthy and allow the difficult, whether it's grief or fear, to bind you and become stronger together. Let's see, emotional repression and the good kid. Okay, I'll just read these things that I've highlighted here. I think overall these emotions made me bottle up my emotions and caused me to be distant from my parents, made me ignore my feelings to make myself feel better in the long run. I took back all the missed experiences or time that should have been good memories, and they almost seemed unimportant because I did not partake or they just weren't great. This obviously had a long-term effect on me. When something bad happens, all I can think is, well, it can be worse, or this is nothing. See, one of the great tragedies of repressing emotions, especially if you do it long-term, okay? This person had very traditional parents, very religious, indoctrinated to have good grades, don't date, so very repressive in, background. And had some, I guess you would say, benefits. This person got A's and this person didn't get into drugs or whatever. But when it came to experiencing and expressing feelings, this person learned to say, when something bad happens, it could be worse or it's nothing. And also when something enjoyable or some desire comes along, you're starting to think, well, is it acceptable to my parents, instead of having the autonomy and thinking about the joy that you can experience by pursuing it on your own, especially as an adult. It can have an effect, a long-term effect. Like this person said, I've always been a straight A student. I didn't curse, never dated, didn't do drugs. Maybe talking to them now and telling them how it made me feel would help me bring them closer, at least put things in the past. I think that is true. It's never too late. That's another notion. You can say in this case, listen, look at all the things you did do for me. Because you were so hard on me, okay? Though I don't believe in physical punishment, you wouldn't want to use that, okay? The physical punishment was not a good idea. I don't think that's ever a good idea. It's a form of abuse, in my opinion. But you could say, your strictness helped me, not get pregnant. If I don't date, I don't get pregnant. Didn't do drugs, getting caught up there. Didn't curse. I was a good student. But here are the things that it didn't prepare me for. Was to be happy, was to express my emotions. It's to develop relationships with other people. And I'm always really suspicious, and I've cut off my feelings, so having this attachment makes it very difficult for me to relate, to develop meaningful romantic relationships or friendships. And I think you can do that so that they can notice that, again, it was not all bad, but it was not all good either. And it's important to have that kind of honesty. And to do it in an accepting and non-judgmental way. So, okay. Reaction formation. Okay, there was one example. Person offered that she had gone to the gym with her brother and was doing homework there. And this really cute guy approached her. And she was so taken off guard that she stuttered. And she actually had, she probably wanted to establish a relationship, but she actually had a kind of a pout, right? Concentrating on the opposite emotion, like, oh, I don't want to be around you, in order to cover up the true emotion, which was an interest or attraction. In its psychological language, this is called reaction formation, where you concentrate on the opposite feeling in order to cover up the feeling that you have that's making you uncomfortable at this point. Okay. Again, notice how if we become more comfortable dealing with our emotions and interrupting, this like almost panicked reaction we have to a surprise, right? Then we can actually have just a normal conversation with somebody. And maybe it will turn out to a date. Who knows? I did bring this up in my own presentation this week, where I said, I believed this person talked about Chella, the person in Ovarian Psychos, and how she chose to spend more time with her daughter and get away from the Spike Brigade because she wanted to give her daughter those things that she didn't have growing up. Again, and I brought up the fact that oftentimes social justice work does have a need for this kind of balance. Here's another point from the Ovarian Psychos film, that when the norm is unjust, it is just to rebel and go against the norm. Norms are not always moral and normal, again, though norms almost always try to assert that they are. Okay, part of what was happening in Ovarian Psychos film, though some people thought, well, they looked like they had similarities with gangs, but they were actually trying to recuperate the symbol of gangs to develop empowerment and go against a negative norm or negative expectation. So I think that was a really good example or a good insight in terms of this person. She said, growing up, I was not allowed to play certain sports because I was female. I was not allowed to play outside after dark because men are after women. I was not allowed to go out with friends because everyone was getting pregnant or drinking. Again, some of these may be somewhat necessary, okay? But if they aren't countered with an understanding of developing healthy, intimate relationships in supervised spaces or in safe spaces, then you just have a negative view of marriage and kids, all right? And said, I did not want to get married because I did not want someone telling me what I can do and cannot do all the time. So not only the negative notions by not being able to engage in pure relationships, but the negative being forced by parents gave her a notion, I don't want to be part of a marriage because I don't want to be playing the stereotypical female role of subservient, and I don't want other people telling me what to do. And so she kind of identified with Chella, talking about her emotional issues, Chella in the film Ovarian Psychos, right? And finding it hard to face her past emotions. Chella was also sexually abused when she was young, okay? But again, it's a struggle, but we keep on going that direction. And here's what I said. You are recuperating or rehabilitating stereotypes by making them your own and making fun of them, okay? A lot of times, again, in Ovarian Psychos, they were using the symbols of ovaries, like they were a gang symbol, putting down where their ovaries were, they made them like this. So again, there are ways to use, this is one of the ways to use humor to subvert negative feelings and negative stereotypes. So that pretty much does it. I'll just read this last part here. I believe that making the film, helping the founder of the group, Ovarian Psychos, revisit her trauma, and in return, it helped her realize many things. This was Chella, okay? So by making the film and by talking about it, involving herself, and that the co-founder of Ovarian Psychos was able to revisit her trauma and helped her realize many things. Although in the beginning she tried not to let her emotions surface, such as crying, it helped her recognize that the experience still hurts her. So she had repressed emotions from childhood. She tried to do it through this bicycle brigade. Doing this film about this bicycle brigade brought up these feelings, and one of them being that she wants to be able to be there for her daughter. And one of the, again, I'm just going here, one of the things that she realized was that she knows that what happened to her was real and it was not her fault. Also, revisiting those emotions of shame and anger helped her realize that although she was using these as motivation to fight for others, in the end, she's a human being that was hurt and was robbed of her childhood, and that her feelings are valid in every way, and remembering her trauma still hurts her. She also realized that the most important person in her life was her daughter, and although her group was important to her, the attention she was giving her group was greater than the one she was giving her daughter. Her daughter is her priority, and her main motivation to keep going forward without ignoring her feelings about what happened to her as a child. So again, there's a process here that happened when a lot of times we repress emotions and we fight against it by creating a group to counter what happened or gave rise to that emotion, or create victimization. And in this case, created vulnerability and opening up to a deeper emotional level where she, in this case, Chella, the leader of this group, decided to leave it and put it into her daughter. So this is, again, you can see the process of healing happening here as emotional awareness, development, healing going forward, and becoming more honest and open about them creates this movement forward, okay? And now I'm finishing. Her daughter is her priority and her main motivation to keep going forward without ignoring her feelings about what happened to her as a child. In the Latino community, it is typical to not let emotions surface when a person is going through some sort of trauma. It is normal to act as if everything is all right. In Chella's case, she did this for many years, but the making of the film let her emotions surface, even if it was just for a little bit. So that is, I think, a worthy note on which to end this. Again, this is a process that takes time. This class is not going to do it for you. Your university education is not going to do for you. The School of Hard Knocks is not going to do for you. It takes conscious, patient, vulnerable acceptance and working with the beauty of the self. The self that is tender, it's fragile, it can be hurt. It's good that we can be hurt, that we can feel, and we can feel justice and in tragedy for ourselves and others. It opens the door for us to be committed to create healthy, loving situations going forward, and developing strategies in this class to interrupt injustice, interrupt stereotypes, interrupt unproductive or reactive or unreflective emotions, and learn into them, both within ourselves and in our relationships with other people, interpersonally, socially, community, and even as a world. So my inspiration or motivation for you is to continue on this. Let this work with you and work with each other in these group presentations to expand this ability to go beyond merely the self into a way to share these feelings with others and to work on strategies together to share with others so that we can all help each other move forward in developing our emotional intelligence and effectiveness. So until next week, this is Dr. Zeus signing off and saying blessings. Bye.